I never thought my father could be someone who would cheat not because he was perfect, but because he believed in things, loyalty, family, truth. My mother, a quiet but fierce woman, had stood by him through layoffs, depression, even cancer. She wasn't soft with her love, but it was always there. Last fall, Dad and I were sitting outside on the porch. It was one of those rare weekends we had alone after Mom went to visit her sister in Maine. We had coffee. He looked tired. He said, "I feel seen when I talk to her. I didn't ask who her was. I just knew. He told me about a coworker, Anna, who made him feel heard. Not just about work, but about who he used to be. The man with dreams before life became just survival. They'd been talking during long nights on a big project. Coffee breaks turned to after work dinners. Nothing physical, he swore. He looked at me like he needed permission. Maybe even forgiveness. Do you think it's wrong even if I haven't done anything? Physical, and I whispered yes, not yes, it's wrong, just yes, like I understood, like maybe feelings should count. He smiled, almost grateful. That smile haunts me now. Weeks later, Mom found texts, long ones, deep ones, not sexual worse. You make me feel alive again. I wish I met you first. I dream about your smile. She cried in a way I'd never seen. But she never yelled. She just quietly stopped making dinner, stopped sitting beside him at the table. They lived in the same house but spoke like polite strangers. Dad never left, and Anna, she moved to another city. But what was broken never really healed. One night months later, Mom looked at me and said, "You knew, didn't you?" And I nodded. I wanted to say I didn't mean for this to happen, but I did say yes, and I regret it. Because maybe he just needed someone to say no. It never starts with a kiss. It begins with a pause, a glance, a laugh that lands too easily. Emotional infidelity doesn't crash into a marriage like a wrecking ball. It leaks in through the cracks no one notices, or worse, the ones we pretend aren't there. My dad used to sit quietly at the kitchen table even when Mom was bustling around making dinner. He'd ask her about groceries, bills, the news, never about how she felt, and she stopped asking about his thoughts too. Their conversations became transactional. I remember watching them sit in silence during dinners, chewing and scrolling on their phones. There was nothing wrong, but everything felt hollow. He started talking to Anna at work. Just small things, nice report, good luck with the presentation, rough day. And she responded, kindly, with interest. She laughed at his sarcasm, the kind Mom once loved, but now met with tired sighs. He said she asked about his old music collection. No one had asked him that in years. She liked classic rock. She reminded him of who he used to be in college before the mortgage, before the anxiety meds, before the distance. That part was important to him. It wasn't about her, not really. It was about the mirror she held up showing a version of him that still had life. At first, he told himself it was harmless, no touching, no dates, just conversations, but I could see the shift. He smiled more. He started trimming his beard more often. He looked at his phone a little too long when a message came in. And late at night, when Mom went to bed early complaining of headaches, he'd linger in the living room, thumbs dancing quietly on the screen, not hiding just, not saying, "That's the thing." Emotional infidelity thrives in silence. There were no confessions, no confrontations, just quiet. And in that quiet, a bond formed between two people who didn't sleep together, but who shared secrets, hopes, fears, who gave each other the emotional language they stopped using at home. That language, once intimate, had now turned foreign in our house. When he finally told me about her, his voice was shaking. He didn't sound like a man proud of his actions. He sounded like someone confused by the strength of what he felt. He kept saying he hadn't done anything, but the guilt was already growing under his skin. "I haven't touched her," he said, "but I think about her more than I should." I remember sitting with my coffee going cold, heart pounding, trying to reconcile the man who raised me with this stranger. He asked if he was a bad person, and he looked like a boy again, uncertain, ashamed, maybe even hoping I'd rescue him from his own feelings. I whispered yes, not because I thought it was okay, but because I saw how lonely he was, and how broken things had become between him and Mom. And in that moment, I thought maybe if someone just understood him, it would fill the hole. But emotional intimacy isn't a patch for a failing marriage. It's a thread that pulls the whole fabric apart. The real betrayal wasn't that he wanted to be heard. It's that he stopped trying to be heard at home, and somewhere Mom had stopped trying to be seen too. When I looked at her weeks later, staring blankly at a TV show she wasn't watching, I realized emotional infidelity doesn't always end in a divorce. Sometimes it just leaves a room permanently colder. It strips away the trust that once lived quietly in the background. It wasn't about sex. It was about secrets, about giving the most vulnerable parts of yourself to someone who isn't your partner because you've forgotten how or stopped trying, or believe they've stopped caring. And even if nothing physical happens, you know something irreversible did, and it started in silence, in a house where love once spoke loudly, where no one raised their voice anymore, not out of peace, but out of resignation. I watched my father shrink under the weight of emotions he never meant to carry, and I realized emotional infidelity is just as real, just as damaging, and far more complicated than anyone warns you. The night he told me, I felt like the grown-up in the room, but I wasn't prepared for that kind of moment, the kind where a parent's voice carries not authority, but uncertainty. His question was soft, like it hurt him to ask, "Do you think it's wrong even if I haven't touched her?" Well, I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because the question was coming from my dad, the man who taught me never to lie, the man who once said, cheating isn't just physical, it's where your loyalty lives. I grew up believing that. He believed that too, at least I thought he did. He looked at me not like a father, but like a man standing on the edge of something, guilt, maybe, or hope, maybe both. I should have said no. I should have looked him in the eye and reminded him of everything that would unravel the moment he gave his feelings permission to exist outside his marriage, but instead I whispered yes, and the truth is, I didn't even know what I meant. Yes, I understood. Yes, he wasn't a monster. Yes, it wasn't technically cheating. I don't know. Maybe part of me wanted to comfort him. Maybe part of me was too afraid to be the one who disappointed him. I didn't want to scold my father, I just wanted him to feel less lost. But what I didn't realize was that in giving him that sliver of validation, I handed him permission. A daughter's whispered yes can carry more weight than she understands. In the days that followed, something shifted in him. He seemed lighter, more present, not with Mom, but with me. I think he felt safe sharing that part of himself with me, like he had someone in his corner, even if he didn't know what corner he was fighting from. He never told me about the texts, not until they were discovered. Mom found them while sorting laundry. His phone had buzzed, and instinct made her check. She told me later she wasn't even looking for anything. That's what hurt her the most. She wasn't suspicious. She trusted him. The texts weren't erotic. They were worse. They were full of emotion, full of the kind of words I had never heard him say to Mom, not in years. You see parts of me no one else does. You bring color back to my world. I wish things were different. She didn't yell. She didn't throw anything. She just walked into the kitchen, held up his phone, and asked, "Do you love her?" He said no. But that wasn't the question she was really asking. She was asking if he stopped loving her, and he couldn't answer that either. She didn't scream or leave. She stayed. She made dinner in silence. She washed dishes without a word. But she never reached for his hand again. That quietness, the same quietness that had made room for Anna, became permanent. One night, after everything, Mom sat down next to me on the couch. She looked so tired, not from anger, but from heartbreak she hadn't wanted. "I loved that man through every version of him," she said, eyes fixed on the TV, "even the versions he didn't like." And I couldn't help but wonder, did he know that? Had he forgotten? Or had he assumed that kind of quiet, enduring love would always be there, no matter how far he drifted? That was his blind spot. My father wasn't evil, he wasn't cruel, but he was lonely, and he made a selfish decision in a moment when he needed connection more than clarity. And I, thinking I was offering compassion, gave him just enough comfort to step further into it. I have replayed that whisper, that yes, in my head 1,000 times. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie, but I became part of something that broke a piece of my mother's heart, and part of me feels like that fracture started with me. Not because I meant harm, but because sometimes the people we love the most are the ones we protect in the wrong ways, and the cost of that protection is someone else's pain. In that moment, I thought I was helping my dad feel seen. But all I really did was turn my face away from my mother, and I regret it more than he'll ever understand